Welcome to the Volvo Grader build. Let's start off with the front axle. Don't mind the squeaking of the chair. It is what it is. Anyways, you're going to have a bunch of parts that we're going to be assembling today. I'll give you the sizes, dimensions, or whatnot of each fastener. So we'll look at which fasteners you should be using, if it's M3s, M2s, M4s. If it's going to be different parts that you need to have threaded rod or just shafts, like smooth stainless steel shafts. There'll be either an M3, M4, even up to M6. We're gonna have bearings. I'll tell you exactly which size bearings because there's a few different sizes. There's gonna be like 4 by 7 by 4s, or 4 by 10 by 4s, or 6 by 12 by 4s, or 3s, or whatever they are. I'll tell you exactly all the dimensions of each fastener and part that you're going to be putting in. I may not call each part that was printed the name of the print, but I mean, bear with me. There's a lot of parts that were created and I don't remember all the names, but I'll show you what it looks like. You just need to find the part and start assembling. There are things that you should take in consideration. Assembling a lot of things first, then painting is probably going to be the way to go. And I'll tell you when I start painting or when I stop assembling, paint, and then do more assembly after the fact, because there's certain parts that there's very tight tolerances, and maybe painting and then assembling is not going to work because it's going to be really tight. So it's probably better to assemble, then paint, and then it'll be a better fit. There's also going to be parts that are moving or not moving. There's an option. For example, this cylinder here, it moves because we have the tilted axle. Now you can also print the solid one so you don't have to do the tilted axle. And what does that mean? Well, when the axle's in here, it'll tilt. All right, so the tire will tilt, and this is just there for the looks, but it adds to the realism and detail. Now, you can have the one that doesn't move and it'll just stay straight because you don't want to add the extra functionality. And that's fine because there's a servo that'll actually move that piece. If you don't want to have servos, you don't need to, and you can just leave it solid. There's a cylinder like this that'll be solid. It's going to be mounted the exact same way. The only difference is the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to grab the cylinders and I'm going to have the one that moves. And again, this is just for show. The actual part that's doing the moving is a servo. It's this one here. And I'll show you how to assemble this. It's going to be on a 12-gram servo. I'll show you where to get these OMGs. They're really good. They're pretty strong. Stronger than your regular servos. So look out for these ones. They're a little bit better quality and they're a little bit stronger. So see if you can get those. These are pretty much the same size as a 9-gram, just stronger. Now back to the original assembly. What we're going to do is we're going to start with adding the axles. So these axles go on a specific way. Actually, even before that, we're going to press in these bearings. These are 4 by 7 by 4 bearings. There's one on each side. So you'll press those in. It should be a snug fit. If it's not a snug fit, again, that's fine. Just leave them in there. The next part you're going to have is this M2 by 12 screw, and it's going to hold that cylinder in, the bottom one. Don't tighten it too much because then it won't have the movement. If you tighten it too much, it becomes very hard to move, and we want to have this moving smoothly. Now, looking at the axles, there's 2 holes on each side. If you notice, the axle has the outside, which will align with the axle here, and then you're also going to have a hole just above. That is for the extra detail, and we'll get to that later on, but this is going to assemble like this. Notice the axle itself is going to have this hole pointed up because it's going to attach on one side to this cylinder, and then there's going to be a shaft like this one that's going to come behind here, and we'll attach that to both. Now, I think this is a good time to talk about painting. You could paint these all now, but you're going to have to scrape off all the paint around this area here. The reason why, because this pivots. Now, if you're not going to do the pivoting, assemble it all, then paint after. Now, the other thing to keep in consideration is you're going to need to put in the steering knuckles. All right, and so I would suggest assembling all this first, and then attaching it here. So let's do that. First, we're going to grab some M3 by 12s, I believe. And we'll just take a measurement here. M3 by 12s. And so those M3 by 12s will go one in the top and one in the bottom. Now, orientation is important. There's two of these, okay? So we need to establish which side is the front. The side with these two notches faces the front of the grater. So this is the nose, okay? You'll want it to be like this. It's going to slide in here after. So we want to make sure, because it's going to use this as the stops for when it's on an angle, okay? So front of grater, this is going to be on this side, on the right side, and the other one's going to be on the left. So notice the orientation. This part faces forward when it's in the axle, okay? That's how you know this is the right side and the other one is the left side, okay? So when you go to put these in, they should be like this. All right, let's start fastening these axles. Now this doesn't really have a up or down, the hub itself, so just want to make sure that we're putting it in the right way. It should just be tight enough, but not too tight. Okay, so it moves smoothly. We'll paint this one after. Now this one goes on this side, and we'll drop another. This is going to be a 16 mil M3 by 16. Goes through the front. Do not put it through the back because the steering knuckle will hit, and then if you're not using these round head screws and you're using the regular ones like this, you'll notice the difference. Okay, one's round head, one's socket head cap screw. This is going to bump into there. So what you want to do is make sure you do it through the front and screw this in, and it should go through just before the end there. Make sure you line it up. Again, this shouldn't be too tight because you want it to be able to articulate. So there you go. Next comes the front axle. The front axle is going to have two bearings inside. And I believe these ones are a little bit bigger. These are the, I think, 4 by 10 by 4. Yeah, 4 by 10, 4 by 9, 4 by 10 by 4. All right, one on each side. One of the other things you'll need to make sure is you get a washer, put it on the inside here, okay, and it's going to ride on there, but you want to see how each washer has a flat side and a rounded side. The rounded side will be facing the inside of the hub here. And then you're going to get your M4 by 20, M4 by 20 screw. Again, I'm using the round-headed ones. You don't have to. And the way it's going to go is you're going to push the screw through, and then you are going to screw it into the hub and tighten it. And this one's going to be just tight enough that the wheel still spins. If you tighten it too much, the wheel will not spin, and we don't want that. So keep going. Also, you're going to notice the back here has a hole. You'll notice that that's the limit. That's as far as you really should be screwing it in. And now I've screwed it in, and the tire doesn't really move. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back it out a quarter at a time. Still a little bit tight. I'm going to back it off another quarter turn. I could go a little bit more. Another slight turn in. There we go. And that spins just enough. So you've got this side done, and now you'll do the other side. All right, so I've pre-done that. Once you are done, you're going to get the cap for the front wheel. I suggest you paint the wheels first before you assemble them. And then I've got these screws, and they have a different end on them. So they're not a socket head, they're just like a regular bolt. And I got this from AliExpress. I'll put the link for these as well, but they look more like the real thing. And they also have them in a chrome version. So you can put these and make it look like it's chrome all the way around, like real lug nuts. And fasten those on. You may have to open these threads up a little bit. Again, for a lot of the 3D printing, if you do need to, and these holes are tight, just go get yourself a 3mm or 2mm drill bit, and then drill out just these tops. The rest of the threads that we screw into are the right size. But if the hole you find is too tight, just get yourself a 3mm, 2mm, 4mm, whatever you need, and then fasten this down, put them all in, just tight enough, and then you'll have all the screws, all 10. So again, we're going to put the other one on the other side because we want to show you how to assemble all of this. So this one will go on. We'll grab another one of these guys, pop them in, and again, we want to do this from the front. There we go. Some of these should slide through, and then just fasten it at the very end. There we go. So there we have, the front axle is now assembled. We're going to do this cross brace here, but we also want to put this guy. So we're going to grab another M3 by 16, I believe, M3 by 16. Yep. So another M3 by 16. You're going to grab this cylinder top, you're going to push this in. Now you're going to grab this and thread it through, so it should thread through here, and then it's going to go through the axle tops. This is where we're going to assemble the other side. So once we have this, you're going to want to put this through here. Now should have actually, let's go back and rewind a bit. You want to put it through so that you can start feeding that. Okay, once that's through, then you're going to get yourself an M3 nut. Get lock nuts. I didn't get a lock nut, but I'll put a little bit of Loctite. Thread that on. Actually, before we thread this on, I'm forgetting a part here. You need to get your, whatever this axle is, you're going to put this through. Then you're going to tighten this down, but not too tight. This still needs to move freely. And tighten that down. Actually, going to thread this a little bit more. There we go. So now we have the tilt on one side. You can see that's how the axle looks. The other thing we're going to do now is also do the steering knuckles. So these knuckles here, these ball joints, they don't have a threaded rod that comes with them, so you're going to need to get an M2 threaded rod, cut it down to about 1 inch for each side, and you're going to thread it almost all the way down. Then you're going to get yourself 2 different M2 screws. This M2 screw is probably a 20. Yes, M2 by 20 and an M2 by M2 by 12. So there's a specific side you need to put these on. The one with the longer screw goes on the side where the servo is going to go. So for your steering servo, you're going to get another one of these MC4 OMGs. If you don't get these, just get a regular 9-gram servo. Get the longest horn that you can. Drill a hole that's about 2 mils through. Get these M2 by 10s. I'm guessing that should be long enough. Even M2 by 8s. M2 by 10, M2 by 8. And you're going to feed the wire through the hole. You're going to push this all the way through. This is should be a snug fit on the outsides. All right. And the distance here that should be open is about, I'd say, what do we got? You're going to have to do your own alignments. It's about almost 7 mils. And then you know that this side here is going to take the longer screw. Now I drive these all the way through so that they're secure. And you're going to have to put a nut on the other end. You thread this all the way. Make sure that you have this go on. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you do go and get your servo done, like you can attach this, but what I've done is before I even install this, I got my servo tester. Make sure that the servo horn is in the center. So when it starts up, it doesn't go turn and then break something, right? So we want to make sure you test your servos first. Okay, and snug this down so it's just tight enough that it's not binding. And then you're going to do the same for this side, and it goes on the top. Alright, so you can see here, this is the top, this is the bottom. Okay, I'm going to put this one through as well. This one gets threaded into the horn. Now this is all going to get painted, so I'm not concerned about my screw color choice here. Let's make sure these are straight so we're not creating a new hole. Okay, tighten it down. Alright, I have a lock nut for this one, which is great. Put your lock nut on here and thread that down. Oopsie daisy. Okay. I'm not going to go all the way because I'm going to take this out because I want to paint it. Now, this side here, notice we need to get another M10. Feed this through. This is for the tilt, remember? And should have done it all in order, but it doesn't really matter. You figure out the order you want to do it in. In certain areas, I will tell you what the order should be. It should be like an M, let's say 6 to get rid of the threads. So M6 with the 3. And then now we have steering. Okay. And the steering is behind. Now, here, put your M2 screws by 8. And I'm going to put these ones because they're the ones that I put in originally. Now I'm not going to tighten these all the way down because I'm going to take the steering apart and paint, but you will do it after it's painted. Okay, any electronics go on after the painting process. not before, because you don't really want to paint all these things. Now you can paint the servo in place so it blends in, it's all yellow, that for sure, but all these pieces here, if you want to paint it all in one shot, you can do it. Alright, if you are also painting, make sure you paint everything, but don't paint the cylinder. You're going to want to leave it gray or chrome. And there you go, front is done. This is going to feed in through the nose, which is the next part we're going to be putting together. Alright, moving on to the nose. There's a few parts that we're going to print for that. This front plate piece that's going to go over the nose. It's going to take M2 by, let's say, 8 and an M2 by 8, or maybe even 10 up here. I'll probably use an M2 by 8. There's going to be these two parts. This is going to go over the servo, and I'll show you how to put that in. And then this is going to go across, and I'll show you how that goes in. But before we do all of that, there's also the back here where the pin or the ball joint piece is going to come in handy. And that's for the moldboard. You're going to install this on the moldboard, and then you're going to put that in here. But right now we're not doing that. We'll show you how to assemble all this. Right, and this will go on after. I just have one on here right now because I just wanted to test it, but essentially how it's going to go on. You can use the same screws that I did, or you can use your M2. They will fit inside because the head of these fit inside that hole, so they'll be flush. But first, we also have some accessory pieces. These two plates here, and I'll show you a close-up. Hopefully you can see that. They will attach to this cross brace here, and we'll use some M2s to cover that. It's to replicate hoses. And then this piece here is actually going to be used on the one side, which has a hole. As you notice, the other side does not. This is a fake hole side, and this is the real hole. The reason why we're going to do that is because we have to have the servo from the steering come through here and come up. So before we even attach the servo for the tilt, this is the optional piece, we need to attach it. There's two pieces here. There's this little rod, and one side has a bigger hole than the other. And the reasoning for that is when you look at the steering, remember when we put that extra one by itself? Well, that's just to hold it for now, but this is going to come in after, and I'll show you how to assemble that in a minute. But before we even do all of that, we need to put the servo inside. Now, attach this with an M2 by 6. M2 by 6. And you're going to have this little horn piece here. Now, before you attach it, I attached it this way. The reasoning I did it this way was because this has to be flat. And if you put it the other way, it won't be flat. And this is just to stiffen this up a little bit. So you put an M2 by 4 on the bottom and then M2 by 6 on the top. This still needs to be loose enough that it can move, but still tight enough that this is pressed up against here. So you'll drill out a couple M2 size holes on the servo horn. Make sure you have the servo horn already centered, which would be down, okay? Straight down is where you want it to be, and then fasten it. What you'll do is you'll throw this in here and slide it in. But before we do that, grab your axle and run your servo horn through this hole and up, inside, and out of the way. Now, why do I say this? Because it's easier to do it now than it is to do it after, and I'll explain why. Make sure your axle's facing the right way, which is these facing forward. This is going to go through. I broke mine a little bit, but you want to put that before actually, so that this slides through. And then you're going to glue it on. Starting with the nose, there's a couple things we're going to do. We're going to run the servo wire from the front axle through this hole on the side. So you'll see it looks like there's this cover here. That's all super glued in place, okay? On the front, hopefully you can see that. It just feeds through, and you'll feed this through until it's not dangling out like this so much. All right, and the reason we do this is because this servo is going to come up here. It's going to follow this path. But we want to make sure this is through now because it's going to be harder. Now this goes on after you feed the servo wire. Do not put the servo wire after, because then you'll be breaking this off and try to feed it through, because the end is really big and it won't fit through there. Now you can get servo extensions that'll go over this and you can run it all the way, or you can cut the wires here and feed them all the way direct to your receiver at the very end. So it's what I might end up doing here. I don't know. I really like, if I want to reuse these servos later on in life, or maybe I'll just buy new ones, to be honest, but I'll just cut it off here, solder on 3 new wires to take me all the way the distance that I need to, so then I wouldn't have to worry about gluing this in place before. But now, to make sure that this is on properly, I just wanted to show, you're going to get yourself an M4 by 25 screw. You're going to feed it through the front, and it's going to go through the bearings through the back here. I'm going to feed it all the way through to the other side. Now on the other side, you're going to put on a nut at the end. This one probably requires me to screw this in a little bit. I made this a little bit tight, but actually a 25 is going to get all the way there. Now this end here, just make sure you do screw it in and it should poke. Now when we do our steering, it should never bind, right? It'll never touch. Okay, so now we have this, it's loose, it's not staying up. The steering, we've got the steering, we got our knuckles all the way almost in here, and this one's adjusted. So now that this tilts, we want to make sure we can put the tilt mechanism in, which is the servo. And again, the servo's attached with this arm. There's a little servo horn extension piece here just to stiffen up the servo arm that's on there. You're going to have an M2 by 4, an M2 by 6. You're going to screw them in, but not so tight that this guy can't move. Now we're going to feed this through, and it's going to pop out the side here. Now one thing, actually what we should have done was not feed this through yet, because there's a reason why. We have to feed that arm through. So don't put your M4 in. There's a reason why I did it, and I remember now. The axle cannot go in just yet. The axle needs to stay out so you can feed this all the way down. Now, the servo should be lining up with the hole inside here, okay? And it should be smooth along the back. So as we push this, it should line up all the way and hit the bottom. And now it's in place. And if you want to make sure, just tuck that all the way back. Make sure it's all the way in. It's all good. You want to make sure that it is, because this hole here has to be smooth. Why is that? Because we're going to be feeding this pin through. Now I put an M2 by 8 screw here, and we're going to put it in a certain direction. And the direction is this little hole has to be facing the front. And we'll push this through. Why? Because it's going to help lock in the servo horn. And then you have this U-shaped piece. It's got a hole in the top, and it's going to slide right over the arm of the servo, the servo bracket. Okay? Now that we have this all in place, we can put that M4 screw, because this is now hanging out, and we're going to adjust that. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to push the M4 by 25 all the way. And once we do that, if we can find the hole here, it's a bearing, so it shouldn't be too hard. But I'm making it hard for myself. There we go. All right. So this goes in, again, just nice and snug, not too tight. This all moves nicely. See how it hits its stops? Okay, this is now in place. This pin has been driven through. You will get the other side of it and you'll put the other M screw. And if I can find, oh, there's the nut, I don't need that. But I'm gonna put this one on now after, and what this does is this is gonna go right over the horn and it secures it in place. So the servo will not move forward. All right, so we have our two servo leads are gonna head towards the back, and then we're gonna attach a screw here, an M2 by 6, sorry. And that one, again, you can put it in if you want. I'm not gonna put it in. We'll edit that out while I try to find this plate. Oh, man, was it this one that I needed here? No, we'll see, whichever one makes more sense. Okay, let's go back now. Now, we're gonna get the other screw. We're gonna put this in on this side. And this is gonna go through that plate. Remember the orientation, 2 holes facing forward and then 2 holes like that. We're gonna put it through the middle hole, okay? And then that's gonna go in right here, okay? No. Edit all this stuff because this is a pain in the butt.
It's ready.
All right. Oh, yep. Why is this so difficult? Keep rolling, rolling, rolling. Keep rolling, rolling, rolling. Okay, and action. All right, we're gonna feed this other screw through the other side and it'll lock in that pin that we drove through. Again, this is more for the aesthetic side of things. You'll see in the real machine that this is actually there with hoses going into it. And if you really want to do detail, then by all means, put as much detail as you like. Okay, we got each one. This is the first time I've done this too, so you guys. All right, now we're done that. What we need to do, okay. Next, we're gonna grab this front plate. You notice all these holes here. This is to put attachments on. They're 2 millimeters, so you can fit your fasteners to tighten them. So your M2s, and you'll put it in here and you'll fasten it through. Now it's just, again, you don't need to put any nuts on the back. It's tight enough so that when you thread in your M2s, it should hold into this plate. So if you want to put a front plow, you want to put your headlights up there, the extra headlights, doesn't matter. There's a way that this goes in, okay? You'll see that there's this bottom here and there's this top. So this bottom has 2 holes that are going to drive into the bottom here. And the way we do this is we push this on like that. And we put one M2 by 8 in here. And then we put 2 M2 by 8s on the bottom. And that'll wrap up the front. I also put another piece here. You know, you can decide to, I'm all over the place here, but you can also put this little bracket piece and glue it in place here instead. And you can have hoses going in, connecting there, or you can have hoses sort of going into these holes here. Up to you which one you want to do. You can either do this one or this one. I wanted to try this on this side. We'll see. Once it's painted, maybe it looks good. If it doesn't, we'll just take it off. Now this piece at the top goes in like this. We fasten it. And that's going to secure the nose. And this also will be flush, because when you put the nose piece, this top nose piece, as you can see, it has a slanted piece and then there's a kink. The kink is towards the top. As you can see here, this goes on top and it hides all your wiring. And that's the nose completed. We'll put the screws on the bottom here as well. Oh, and we also have to attach this guy. Almost forgot. So let's take this screw out. And ADHD, she's a real bee with me. Okay, so we'll take this out. And we will put in this other bar here. And fasten it. There we go. Put that through, push it all the way. Make sure you get your M3 nut, drive it down so it's snug. Remember using lock nuts if you can in these scenarios, but you don't have to. You can do Loctite with these guys as well. All right, so now we have the tilt, right? Tilt, tilt. Okay, if you want to do a tilt, this is how we would do it. If not, just put in the solid piece here and fasten everything. You don't even have to put that servo in. All right, and then this is the articulation when you're going over bumps. Okay, but then while you're driving and then you want to tilt, right? There you go. That's the front. Let's move on to the neck. All right, moving on to the neck piece. You're gonna have printed this long piece here. It's gonna have a hole in the middle. It's a square hole. I have this brass piece. You don't have to get this, but I did it because I wanted to add weight so that the front of this grater, when this piece slides in, right, it'll add extra weight to the front so that we have grip for the front of the grater, and it actually helps with the weight. Now we're going to have holes on the bottom that'll fasten into the neck. We have holes here on the side. If we want to add a light later on, we can do that, and I might add that as an extra piece. We have holes here to attach, some holes here. Yours is going to look a little bit different. This is going to be depressed a little bit more because I want to make sure there's enough space here for all the wire and cabling to go to the back. You have this front piece here, which is going to help with holding the main articulating piece, and more screws here to fasten the back, the gooseneck piece here. So let's get started on the parts that attach this. You will also have the cover, which goes over. Notice it goes over that piece there, and it slides right to the end, almost to the end. And that's how it's going to look. And then you'll have wires coming here going to your servos, linear servos. Now, one thing that I haven't shown here, but you will notice this piece here is different. Why? Because you'll take off the actual piece that comes with it. So you can unscrew this. Just make sure you hold this tight. Get something to break it loose, because I think they put a little bit of glue on here. And you'll take that off because we don't need that. We're going to use this piece here, which is the part that helps with the pivoting. So once we have this in, it'll pivot off of the ball joint here, and we'll do that once we get to the mold board. But for now, we just want to put that piece in. The other thing we're going to want to make sure is the way it's oriented. So this has to orient opposite of the top piece here. And if you really want to, and you know you're only going to use this for this machine, I'd cut this off so it doesn't look like that's there. Paint this all the dark gray. Now, I was going to put a round sleeve over this, and I'll still design a piece that comes up and kind of rounds off this side so it looks almost like it's all rounded, but not this piece here because of the servo. And we'll want to make sure that these wires kind of come down, and we'll have like a little hook here to hold it so that it comes down and feeds into the machine. So those parts will be coming soon, but again, those are all going to be fitted on before you put on this piece here. And this is important because it's offset. Now, why is it offset? Because it's going to fit in here with the narrower part facing inside, and that's how this is going to slide on. Now, I'm going to create another option here for you guys. If you don't want to get these bearings, you can just do it with a regular hole that's going to be here and just put a 3 mil, an M3, shaft in there and then run it in. Or if you want, you could put a screw that goes in and it'll fasten here and be tight. And you can do it that way. I put these bearings in because I wanted to test and see how strong this would be, if it adds any strength and rigidity so that this doesn't move around. And I'll see how that goes. But what do you need to do to assemble? Well, you're going to need to print 2 of these guys, and you're going to slide them on. Where they slide, I'll give more details later on once we're in final assembly as to once we have the mold board and how high this has to be. This is 75 millimeter stroke. It's a 12 volt, 30 millimeters per second, 75 millimeter stroke length at a 32N, which is the power that it, or speed, sorry, the 30 millimeters is the speed, and the 32N is the torque that it can handle. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna put those in after. We'll get our 3 mil, and then you'll have this little small piece here, which is gonna go over the end once we have that ball joint in at the mold board. Now, to put these pieces in, you'll have to press them in. Here's an example. One's in, the other one's not in. You'll want to start with your fingers, get yourself a pair of pliers or something, run it over, squish it in place. You don't have to do it super hard, it just has to be hard enough that it's in there. Okay, and you'll know it's flat. Then you're going to screw on an M3 by 16, and it's going to go in through this arm. Now, there's different holes in here. You're going to see one that's flat and one that's concave because you're going to throw in these 3 by 7 by 3 bearings, one in the front, one in the back, and another one in here. So this one, you're going to feed that M3 by 16, okay? And then you're going to tighten this on here. And you're going to screw that on nice and straight. Get yourself your Allen screws, fasten it till it's just tight enough that it can move, but not so tight that it can't spin, because you want this to have that pivot. And this is important because as the grader moves up and down and side to side, you will have the motion ability. So this piece here, it'll look like it's almost 2 pieces. Now, this is a little bit tight. I'll back off a little bit, and now it moves. It's still, see how it wiggles a little bit? We want a little bit tighter than that. So now it moves smoothly. And we'll have our bearings go in, but before we do that, okay, this is, all the bearings should be in. This should all be ready to go. Do it on both sides, okay? And that's how it'll look. Missing a bearing here. We'll put that one in. The other ones, again, if you don't want to go with the bearing style, you'll have one here that doesn't have anything, and it'll be a much smaller hole, okay? So that's for you guys if you don't want to do the bearings. Now, the next piece, you're going to have this, forget what I called the file, and then there's going to be like this little motor. This is going to be glued in, okay, because that's for the pin. It's a 4 mil pin that goes in, and that's going to help with this piece because that's going to slide here. So you can change your angles of where you want the mold board to be. So there's 4 positions, okay? This is the center position, and it goes over 1, 2, and then this way here. And then these pieces, the end holes, will go through here like this. And you'll put a screw here or a 4mm pin. Okay. I gotta clean this out a little bit because there's some leftover 3D printing piece here, and this is from the tree supports. Okay, and you'll slide that in till it's like that, and that'll be both sides. And there you go. Sort of how it's supposed to go. Now this piece, it's got to be the back horn, and there's 2 screws here and then 3 screws in the back. These are going to line with these 3 holes, and so this will slide on like that, and you'll put your screws there. So let's do that next. You're going to get some M2 by, let's say, 8s. And you're gonna run these in. Actually, these will not go all the way, will they? Yeah, they will, because they go beneath. And again, this is all up to you. The length on these ones, you can go M6s, M8s, M10s. Wouldn't go more than that. Actually, these are probably a little bit long. I think we're gonna change it to these other M2s. They look like proper hardware, because I got a lot of them. These guys here, these are 8s, M2 by 8mm with this like hex head. Make sure you put it on properly so that it lines up like this. This motor's on the bottom. And this guy goes in. And you fasten that. That's some good measurements, eh? Still have to get that guy in there. Not bad. Math was mathing. This goes right here. And you'll have your gooseneck as well, which will come in handy later. Okay, so you'll make sure you put these 3 in, and then these 2 down here are for the gooseneck that's going to run under, and you're going to have to drop in a couple other screws on the bottom and on the top here. And I'll show you how to do that in a second, but first we're going to put one more on this side, and then I'll show you what to do to get this fastened. You're going to need an M3 by 20, I believe, or 25. I think it's probably an M3 by 25. That's going to hold this whole arm assembly. And that's just the measure of that. Yeah, 25. So M3 by 25s. What you're going to do is you're going to put one arm on one side and the other arm on the other. I got to find out where the bearings are here, because I am missing a bearing. There it is. Okay, make sure you got your bearings in the front and rear. And what you're going to do is you're going to slide this in from the back. I want to hide our screw so it looks clean on the front. And then we're going to get this. And so I'm using the button head style screw. This will go in place, and then there'll be little caps for each side just to cover it off if you want to cover it, where you leave them exposed. Okay, now again, not too tight because you want this to move. Just a little bit tight. There you go, much better. Again, you want this, the ability to move. All right. So there you have that one side, and then do the same thing to the other. Okay, so we have our front steering in position, and we've got the front nose piece. So next, we turn this upside down. We're going to add some M3x8s in here to hold this piece together. So it bonds that so it doesn't want to come apart, even though we've slid it in. It's just to hold it from popping out. Same thing on the back here. There's two more M2x8s going in here in the bottom. And I put the last two M2x8s here to secure the neck, the gooseneck, to the actual neck piece. Alright, so we already have 3 other ones screwed in just to the neck, but these ones attach the gooseneck. Alright, so 2 on this side, 2 on this side. We're going to put our, clean that up. We're going to put our magnets in here for the cover. And yours is going to look a little bit different. This is going to be recessed, so you have a lot more room for the cables to go through. This is my first test piece. I may actually replace this and put in the proper one, because you can see I've changed position of the holes as well. So we'll see. This is a quick, easy part to change, but it also requires the neck to be modified as well, which I didn't want to do all that extra work. So I'm probably going to leave this the way it is, but essentially this is how it's going to look. There's supposed to be 2 more M2x8s that go in the top here to hold this from moving, but I think I'm going to leave them in my case, but you will put them in here to secure the top. It just adds more rigidity, even though this is like solid. All right, now let's start working on these pieces here. All right. So to do these ends, you're going to get your soldering iron. You're going to stick this guy on. You're going to let him get hot. And you're going to take your other end and you're going to feed it through once it gets hot. And you can see how this is already starting to get hot enough that I can push it through and stop there. There you go. That's all you need to do. Hopefully it's nice and straight. If it's not, well, you get to try it again. Alright, so we've done a few things here. We've attached the cylinders. Now yours is going to look like it, well, in the video it looks like it's at the very end, but the ones you're going to have are a little bit further up, because I realized they're not supposed to be there. They're supposed to be up here, and I'll have the revised file for you. We've attached this motor here. So the motor consists of the main body and outside a collar, and then the actual cylinder itself. So if we look at it, we're going to attach it with some M2x6 screws to hold it. So this is going to pivot over here. Okay, so it's going to pivot up, down, wherever the mold board is going to go. All right, not too tight. It has to be able to pivot. And then you're going to cut this to about 32 mils, the shaft, the screw drive for this motor. Okay, this motor is a 12 volt screw drive that's like 100 or 200 mils per second, something like that. But anyways, you'll see it's different than the rest when it comes to its speed. These guys, they're held in by some M3x6, I believe, or M3 by, what are they, M3x6 pins. M3x6 pins. Again, I'm going to probably revise it. Instead of having all this fanciness, just have M3 screws that are 6, and it'll actually screw into this and hold there and pivot. But the reason I did this is because there's bearings and it should be a little bit stronger. But I realized there's no way the mold board's coming up this high at any point. But we'll see once we start testing. And then what you're going to do is you're going to, if you want, cut the head off of this, because you're never going to use it for anything else unless you want to. Keep it on. But I cut it off so it looks a little bit more realistic. I know it's still square. It'd be nice if this was all cylindrical. But at least I have this collar on here to make it look more like one big thing. You're going to split the wires. Try to paint them black so it looks authentic. Run them into this opening here. Okay, there's like 1, 2, and then this third opening is a little bit bigger with a actual notch out of the top. And you're going to run these wires not all the way in, but just enough, and then you're going to tuck them in to go to the back. You're going to have to extend them because they're the ones that come with these linear servos. But essentially, you're going to want to have this down like this. Okay, probably a zip tie or something holding them. And then they're going to need to have a little bit of slack because they do need to rotate out. They'll rotate in, right? Back and forth. There's got to be enough movement for this. Okay, most likely it's going to be mostly like that. Never really like this. But you want it so that at any point, even if it's horizontal, it's got enough movement. All right, so let's move on to, and then here's actually an example with the M3x6. Goes into these two bearings, and those are the collar bearings. All right, one on the outside here, one on the outside of this guy, and then you push your M3 in, and then you're going to get your little outside plate, put an M3x4, secure this, and it stops that M3x6 pin falling out, so it stays secure. And there you have it. Let's move on to attaching the moldboard now. Let's start assembling the moldboard. What you're going to do is, number one, when you're going to go paint it, make sure you do not paint this surface. Tape it up. Tape this area up too. Everything else can be painted, but just make sure this is butterly smooth. Okay, even if you have to wet sand it down to a smooth surface, and when you print it facing down. Okay, so this is against the build plate. Even with your build plate, you may have little nicks and scratches and whatnot. Sand them down. Okay, that's first. Now what we're going to do is we're going to assemble this rotating piece here, and this is for the linear servo that we're going to make, which is this guy right here. And before we attach that, you're going to put a bearing inside here. And I think this is a 3x7x3. And you're going to get yourself a where's my screw for this? I think this is the one. In any case, this is going to be an M3x16, I believe. Yeah, M3x16. Okay, and you're going to screw that into this spot here. Now the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to assemble most of this, and then I'm going to go paint it. The reason why is I just don't want to have to scrape off paint after. But put this in. Now when you tighten this, do not tighten it so much that it cannot freely spin. You want to tighten this down so that it still has free motion. Okay, because this is when the mold board rotates. You want it to rotate with that linear servo. So right now it's still, and you can see it's a little bit loose, right? Wiggles. We don't want any wiggle. We just want it to be like this. See, there's a slight wiggle. Give it another little bit of a turn. It's a little too tight. Back it off slightly. There we go. Nice and smooth. Really no wiggle. And there you have it. Now, the way it should look is the triangle should have a 90-degree facing the back, so that when you put your linear servo in, it's going to attach like this. All right, so now to do your linear servo, you're going to get a nice little M2x8, and then you're going to attach the rod here. This rod, just to make sure we know the dimensions, has a brass knurled, has a knurled end on it, but it's a threaded end, okay? And you're gonna push this in. Now, how are you gonna do that? You're gonna get yourself a soldering iron, or if you're brave, you're gonna go and heat that little metal thing up as hot as you possibly can. I thought this is probably better. Put it in like this, and as it gets hot, I'm gonna push it in, and then once I feel it's in, take it out. All right, yes, and windows, enter them here. This screw here, we should actually check to see how long it is, but I'm going to say you want to thread it down or cut it down to about 20 millimeters. All right. Cut it down so it's only 20 millimeters long. You can even do maybe 21 millimeters. And then you're going to screw this on, okay? Now, there's no limit switches on this one, so please be careful. This is for the angle of the mold board. Now, how does this attach? Has a M2 by 12, and you're going to put it like this, okay? So the big end of the motor is going to go on this side, and these servo wires are going to come out the end, okay? This is just temporary because I'm going to re-solder everything after, but right now, the way we're going to put this is the motor is on the bottom here. This is those 90-degree, or sorry, U-shape motors. So the motor goes this way into the gearbox, and then the gearbox has the shaft with the threaded rod coming out this end, okay? Make sure all of these holes are straight, and you have this one here, and this one's going to be held up at the top. When you put this in, slide it in to its spot here, and then you're going to tighten up this M2. And if I can find my screwdriver. Now, when painting all this, just keep in mind that no one's really going to see a lot of it, but if you're very detail oriented, and there we go, almost all the way down. Okay, so I want to make sure that this is lined up in the middle, so I didn't do that. And now that I see this, maybe I should adjust this print so that the threads don't. Here we go. Now it's in the middle. So as the mold board turns, you'll see this guy follows the bottom. All right, that's that piece. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get these little wings, and these wings have holes here, 2 here, and then 1 on top. This is where that little gear is going to go in, and the fake cylinders. Okay, this is just for aesthetics, but essentially you're going to get M2 by 4s, and it has to be M2 by 4s or else this will contact the ring. We want to make sure the top surface of the ring is perfectly smooth because that's what's going to ride against the inside here. So we put 1 on one side, and you'll know which one's on each side because there's this little bracket side here, and it's going to go right where this notch is. And you'll know you're in the right spot, and then you fasten these down. And just fasten them down till they're just tight. You don't want to put them too far in because again they'll pop through the other side. Okay. There. If I run my finger, I can't feel it. There we go. And same thing for this one. Make sure it's in that notch. You hear that little click just because I didn't put it in first. But you'll tighten this down. There we go. If you look on the bottom, the screws are still shy of hitting the plate. And you'll do it on the other side. Okay, moving on, before we do any painting here, you're going to print this piece. This is what the mold board attaches to. And you see, I printed it vertically. That's right. This was printed up, and this was printed down. So it was in a vertical position. Now, what I did was I had put some supports here and supports here, and the reason why is because I wanted this to be as straight as possible. If I did it like this, it would not be a perfect curve. It would have some edges to it. So I wanted this round piece here to be as round as possible. Okay, and so if it's a little bit tight when you put the mold board in here, sand these edges down, okay, the inside and outside here. And then on the opening here, just cut it open a little bit. Don't mind the heater in the garage. And so that's why I did this. I put a little bit of Bondo here to smoothen this out so when it does get painted, it looks like it's perfectly smooth. And that's the only reason I did it. But what we're going to do is we're going to install this motor. Okay. And one thing here is for you guys who have lathes, you can do this yourself. If you don't have a lathe, then I'll show you a little trick to cut these down. Now, this brass threaded piece it comes with a really big collar, and you've got to cut it down. Now if you have a lathe, you just stick it in the lathe and you shave it down till it's the same width of this outside cylinder. What you're going to do is, if you don't have a lathe, you are going to get your drill. You're going to open it up and you're going to shove the thinner end in here, tighten it down real good, and then you're just going to shave it down with a file. Okay? That takes time, but you're only going to do one of them, so it's not a big deal. But that's how I would do it. I would stick it in like this, tighten it down, and then start eating away at this piece. Once you're done, you're going to shove it in here. Okay? Now I would suggest putting a little bit of super glue and even like rough up the edges on the inside, so that way it has something to bite on, and then just insert it. Okay? That's how you're going to do this piece. And then I'd also suggest sanding down the outside so it's nice and smooth, because when you go and try to paint it with that chrome pen, it'll look good. Same thing with the inside here. Grab yourself a round file and just clean out the inside of these pieces here. The other thing too that you might encounter, again, if your print doesn't print perfect, this is lined up like this. It looks like it's on an angle. I did that on purpose so it wasn't perfectly straight. You might have to chip away at the corner in here a little bit. Okay, this corner here, just shave off a little bit of that so that this little piece here, okay, and notch some of this so that it fits perfect. Okay, so I had to make a little bit of an adjustment there so that it would be all in line. Now it's smooth. Okay, so what you do, you get your motor, and you're also going to cut this motor down to a length of, I believe it's like 75. 81, 82, let's just say 82. Now 82 is from the edge there. Okay, which edge? Right here. Okay, not against this, not against this piece. Okay, against this edge, right, the far side, and from here to here is 82. So then you will solder on your wires, push this in, should be a nice snug fit, and then you're going to get this, and you're going to thread it in. Now you can see how this doesn't look like it lines up really well. And you're going to start it, and you're going to push it in all the way, just so when you go to paint, and this one's pretty quick. Excuse me, I forget the speeds and whatnot. It's a 12 volt by 100 or 200 mils per second, or sorry, yeah, and millimeters or RPMs. Wow, 200 RPM, 12 volt, I think is what it is, or you can do 100 RPMs. Might be more realistic with 100. I can't remember which motor I grabbed, but that's the way it looks. This is how it is. See the hole on this side, you see the hole on the other side, it does not line up. It should be 90 degrees to that one. Okay, what you're going to do is you're going to put this in, and you can see there is that with the outside. Slide it, actually what we need to do is slide this in first. Okay, so slide it through that big hole, push it through a little bit, and then drop that in. Now you're going to put an M2 by 12 in here, and you're going to drive that in. No, wrong driver. And so what happens is now this will hold it in place. You will, once you're done everything, you're going to put a little bit of glue on the outside of this guy, just so it holds it in place, but shouldn't be too much of a problem because you're going to have a plate coming over this to hold this down. Now the holes for your motors are right there, and right there. Those are going to come out. We're going to route them, and I'll show you all the routing for all the wires. And then there's a little collar that goes on the outside. Okay, and you'll probably put a dab of glue on there just to hold it in place. And this piece is almost done. We now need the back plate. Okay, and this is what the linear servo is going to attach to, that does the tilt. Okay, and you'll see there's 2 holes, 1 hole, 2 holes, 1 hole. Put there an M2x8 or an M2x6, whichever one you prefer. And then you're going to drive that down. I like using these little screws. They're not regular socket heads, they're just like a bolt style. And you can get them from AliExpress. They come like 100. They're all 8mm. So again, just tighten this enough so it doesn't poke out the other side. And then you're going to put this one in here. And you're going to drive it in. And we're going to paint this all as one assembly. And then next, we're going to build something else. So tighten this. There you go. And just tight. Now what happens is this all stays in here. This may move a little bit, but again, just put a dab of glue there to hold it in place. There you go. This is all ready to go be painted. Again, if you are going to paint this, cover this with tape. Make sure no paint gets in here because it'll stick and then it'll be a problem. So that piece is ready for paint. And then these parts here, these are the fake cylinders. And I'll show you how to put these together in a second here. This is where the little gear is going to come through, and that's going to go on the front here. But we'll only do this once it's all painted. Essentially it goes like this, and then this guy goes in like that, and you'll put some M2s here, some M2s here, some M2s there, and we'll do it on each side. But we'll show you that after we're done painting. These guys will be after painting. These guys, they go on the side here, and they go like this. They're going to go get painted too because they tie into the other parts. Alright, on to the next piece to put together. Okay, so previously we were working on this. We attached this piece, and again, run wires here that are long enough, about 3 feet, for this moving arm. Okay, this is going to be the side slip for the blade. We've attached M2 screws here. Now we're going to finish by attaching this here and then putting all the other pieces that go along with the limit switches, right? And we have limit switches as well, so we're going to attach that and put it on here, and I'll show you all the size of the screws and how it goes together. But just to show you exactly what this is going to look like, these little triangular pieces are going to go under here. And you see there's these slots to slide to adjust the limit of how far the limit switches go. Okay, so make sure you slide this in first. And again, you're going to have to probably sand this a little bit because it's probably not going to be perfect when you print it. Right, so sand it a little bit, make sure so that this, when it goes on, oh, sorry, wrong side, it's smooth. It goes on, and there's no binding, and there's really no movement, okay? So it's got to be smooth. Mine jams up just before the end here, but that's fine because that's where this little limit piece is going to go. It faces the other way, this one, okay? And so when it comes here, the limit switch will click and it'll stop. And then same thing on the other side. So let's attach that. All right, so we're going to get our limit switch pieces and we're going to put them on here. We're going to do the same thing like we did for the tilt, or sorry, the pivot. And these are going to be M2 by 6. And each one is specific to a certain size. You can see like these two limit switch mounts are different. Okay, so just know that. And then you're going to screw these in. The reason why we want M2 by 6 is so we don't get them going into the other side and poking out, because it's important that they don't poke out. Oh, we were missing there. There we go. And this should fit right over that mount there, and if not, just trim a little bit just so it's snug. I'll put the other one in on the other side to show you. After you install, or before you install the limit switches mounts, right, like over here, I didn't mount it yet because I just want to show you how to do this. But you're going to put these M3 by 10 inside, or you can use screws if you like, but I use the pins because they're smooth. And you're just going to push them in, okay, on each side. Make sure that it's all lined up. There you go. And then what you do is it'll give you that pivot. And same for the other side. On this side here, I already put the limit switch just to show, but essentially you're going to go in and you're going to push this in. All right, so M3 by 10, it could be a screw or it could be a pin. All right, we'll do a little bit of a time lapse here, but this is again same thing as the rest. Cut the center pins off of these limit switches. And then we're going to go in a little bit of this stuff, which is just some flux, just so it has better connection and it solders a lot easier. All right, and then we're going to cut some wires to size. And right now I'm just trying to figure this out myself because I don't know how long the wires need to be. But they need to go the width of this back to the motor and then from the motor back. So I think from here we'll do a long wire, because this is going to come from the back of the engine all the way to here, and then from here. So it's this black and red wire that we need to figure out the length of, and then this blue purple one can be as long as we need it to be. So we'll do that one after, but we need to get these guys the right distance to here, which should be probably, I don't know, let's say 100 mils. Let's try that. So let's start soldering and we'll time lapse all this stuff. Make sure the gray dot from the diode is facing out. Get this one here, situate a little further back. There we go. Now I know people don't like soldering. This is just how it goes. tinned up. Some of these guys. Okay. So we gotta put some wire. Now we're gonna make our final connections here. So what I've done is I've done the typical one wire is going to the motor, one wire is going back to the ESC, same thing on the other side. This one's gonna be a little bit shorter. It's about, let's say 100 mils, maybe 120 mils, and the other one's 250 mils long. And then the rest of the wire is about 3 feet long to go back to the ESC and the motors where everything's gonna be hidden. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go and do our final connections here. So we're gonna get the one wire, the shorter wire, it's gonna go to one side of this motor, and we're gonna solder it on. And we want to do it kind of vertically because it's going to come out of that hole in the 3D print up here. Sorry, there. All right, so it's going to come out of these holes here. And then grab the other wire. And again, you want to tin all of these up so that they're ready to go. I'm left-handed, so that's awesome. Oops. There we go. It's all soldered up. Now what you'll do is you'll put it back in. Push it in all the way. It should be snug. These two wires should come out like that. This will go over. Okay. Like that. And then what you're going to do is, if you have the pen that I use, so I use this chrome pen. Okay, it's called Liquid Chrome. All right. I don't know who makes it, something W. It's a W on there, so you'll know which one to get. It's on Amazon. And then you'll paint it on. It'll look like a chrome cylinder. Again, you'll just wind this on. But you'll do this after the fact, because when you go to put it on, you have to slide it through the piece here, part of the mold board. So when you go put this back on, remember this has to go in through here. And it's probably better if I tilt that and do it through this side to the top. So you're going to put it in, and it should be pretty snug fit. Actually, I'm doing this all wrong. I already showed you how to do it, but essentially put the bottom piece in, and then there's the screw here. All right, that goes in. So let's just do that to show you. And then each one of these limit switches is going to go to a specific side. And then we'll test it all out, make sure it works properly. And then we'll put the lid on, slide it through the hole here. Okay. Push that through. It goes down on top of the body, like that. And then you can glue this down if you like. And then what you're going to do is you're going to get this bracket that goes over to hold it. Put your 3 M2s in there. And then you're going to, eventually we'll show you how to attach it to the top of the mold board. Now, what we have here is we have one short, one long. So the short one is going to go here on this side, and you're going to have the limit switches pointing like this. And use some M2x10 screws to fasten it. You may have to trim the ends off here so that it doesn't touch the plate there. All right, make sure that these are all bent up so that there's no interference, and then you'll tighten them down, and then when the mold board comes and connects, it'll stop, and then same thing for the other side. So I'll show you how that all looks like once it's all installed. All right, now to put the limit switch limiters You're gonna get some M2 by 10s here. M2 by 10s or 2 by 8s. Sorry, M2 by 8s. And you're gonna put one on each side. You're gonna see these little holes, and the piece is gonna slide up on top of here like this. Okay, I'll show you before we tighten everything down, but essentially it's designed to be adjusted based on the distance you're trying to go. And I'm going to adjust this one all the way in because I don't want it going so far. And then the same thing on the other side. It slides in. You put the screw, tighten it down. Let me just get this started and I'll show you. Now, before we put this one in, actually, we need to do something very important, which is slide the bottom mold board in. So you're going to see, we'll do all the cable management later, but right now, we're going to slide this guy in. Okay, and now that it's slid in, you can put this other piece in. And the purpose of this is to stop it from going too far. Now you could go with the traditional linear actuator and put that in, but I just feel it's too big. And it only goes to 50, and this one goes to 75, 80 millimeters distance. So I like that better. Okay, now that you've screwed this in, right, you can adjust this a little bit to your liking. We're going to finally put in the piece here to hold the cylinder end. And it's going to be an M3 by 12. And then I'll show you what it looks like. Now again, this is another optional thing. If you don't like this and you feel that this is too much, you just rather have your blade stay in the middle, there's a part just for that with a fake cylinder that sits in here and looks the way it looks. So just to give you an idea of what this does, we'll plug it in and show you what the limit switch does. So now the limit switches are supposed to stop it when it gets to the end. So there you go. Went all the way to the one end, and now back to the other side. Ooh. Needs to have a little bit of clearance on the cylinder here. So I'll open that up a little bit, but yours should be perfectly smooth because the bore here is probably too tight. So we'll change that. But there you go. That's what it looks like. That's how it functions. And if you want, you can go with the 200. Leave that right in the middle. And that's it. We'll run these wires back. Again, they'll be all zip tied with little black zip ties. Or yellow zip ties if you have yellow zip ties. I've got yellow zip ties. But anyways, this is all going to go back up above the mold board here with the other motor. So you'll have all these wires going in like this. And they're all going to go back to the engine bay or the rear engine. And this is all going to run through the neck and all the way back. That's why we need these extra long ones. And then the ones for the cylinders are going to go direct through the neck and back out. So there's another one over here that we're going to need extra long because that's the spinning of the mold board, and we'll show you how to install that one. So M2 by 8s on the top, M2 by 8s on the bottom. Don't over tighten them because this has to swing. And you're going to get your bottom cylinder. And there's one side that's a little bit longer than the other. You're going to want to have the longer piece towards the inside. So you're going to put that in. You're going to get your M2 by 8. Switching it up with these bolt head style. And again, you don't want it to protrude on the outside because the other piece has to rotate. So that's too far. That's as far as it goes. So like that. And then when it tilts, it stops right there. And I'll adjust it so that this doesn't have this look like that, because I should make this a little bit longer. So you'll have that on yours. There you go. All right, so one thing to keep in mind is as you're going to put these in, just put the front 3 in first, because you need to, actually not even, just put this first one in and then slide this after. If not, it's going to kind of bind here a little bit. I was able to slide it in, which didn't seem to be a big issue, but you can see this feels smooth right now, but I haven't put everything in, so we need to put the last one in there, and then there's the 2 in the back. So we'll add those. This is just something I wanted to keep conscious of. And again, the up and down, there's up and down play right now because nothing's tight yet. And these ones here are going to do all the holding down. This one's going to just keep it forward, and then the back 2 are going to keep it held back. We're going to work on the rotating piece here. So this motor comes with an extra long shaft, and you're going to need that, but we're going to need to cut this down just a little bit, or you can leave it if you like, doesn't matter. But this little mark here is 14 millimeters from the edge here all the way out. You'll trim that down, and then we're going to go and insert this motor in here, and then make sure that you solder your 2 wires on. This is about 2 feet-ish, long enough to go up and around. I cut them a little bit longer just because I don't know the full lengths, but I'll add those numbers in at the bottom here once I get everything done later on in the video. I'll know exactly the lengths of all these wires, so you don't have to cut them longer than they need to be. But essentially we're going to run these like this, and then we're going to put the plate cover over, because this is going to set the spacing here for the front of the motor. Okay, so that'll set the spacing, and then this will cover and be on top. The 2 wires are going to pop out through these holes here, and there you go. All right, so some developments here. We've put this motor in, wired up the positive and negative. There's going to be a couple screws here, some M8s, M2 by 8s, going to go up here. These guys, all right, I originally had a gear system that was going to go in here, but they seem to be a little bit too far away and are binding, and it has to be just loose enough so that this motor can rotate. Again, I'm just testing at a 7 volt. This is a 12 volt motor, so it should, in essence, have enough power to pull through. But for now, I've just put some lock nuts on the bottom here just so that it's set up like this. The gear here has a set screw. I'm using an M3 by 4 set screw to go inside here. You may want to round out the outside a little bit just to get it to go in. Because it's a snug fit. And again, cut this guy down just a little bit. Now the top here, these are the decorative cylinders, so we're going to put these on with some M2 by 8 and M2 by 8s in the back as well. And paint your cylinders. This is more aesthetic than anything else, so they're not functional, but they do add to the look. Now you can position them how you want. I'm going to leave it like this so that it looks like the cylinders are actually exposed. And so for now we'll do it like this, and eventually I'll find a better solution for making these spin while the blade spins as well. And when you are doing this, make sure you do fit the cylinder in first. Alright, because the last thing you want to do is try to put it on after and it's really tight. So another M2x8 going in here. And then you'll run some fake 28 gauge wire for all these cylinders to make it look like they're hydraulic, okay? And then you'll come up here with another M2x8 and position it so that it is over here. Now, depending on how you want it, you can leave it like this, or you can actually move it more so there's more cylinder exposed. So it does one of these, looks more realistic. However you want it. Like that. So there we go. Mouldboard is done. We just got to put a couple screws in here, and then this guy, you'll find the part number for that, but you'll want to shave the back here a little bit. So get yourself a Dremel tool and just cut back this to create more of the ball, and I'll show you why that's important, because it'll give you more pivot. But yeah, this is going to go in here, and whatever the part number is for that, it comes in the pack of 2, because this is supposed to be for the ball joints for your struts for your hood on your car. So essentially that's one of the things that we want to kind of take care of. And then we'll put some, should we put some smaller 2x6s in here just to hold this down. And again, that's the moldboard almost done. We need to do one more thing on the moldboard, and that is running the pivot ball joints for the cylinders. And the reason I say that is because we want to put those want to get those prepped so they go in here. And the reason for that is when we go and put the cylinders on, we want to make sure that we're screwing that. Now we'll do that after the fact, because we want to slide it in and then put the screw in. So it'll be an M3 by, I'm gonna say 16 or 12. This is a 16, goes in, goes like that, goes like that, and another one from this side, and we'll do that on the neck. So that's the next part. We're going to move into a more technical piece of the build, which is the pivot turning piece for the back. So this is the main, and there's going to be holes on the bottom here, one hole on the sides to feed a lot of the wires through to the back, the rear chassis piece. And we need these holes to put the pivot, which is this motor assembly with all these parts on the bottom, and I'll show you what screws you need to assemble here. Now this one's going to change a little bit, because I realized something after designing. I don't really need this hole this far up. It needs to actually move back a little bit so we have space to see how this goes in, because there's a mount on here, and you can see I shaved it off because, well, it should be further back and this one should be further back. So when you see yours will be shifted rears to the rear, or the front actually, let's just say that is the front, this is where the neck goes. This should be shifted more this way, and then the limit switches go underneath, and this way we can pivot the motor and the assembly in. So when we shoehorn this in, it goes in like that, and then these holes get the M3 screws. So what are we going to do? Well, I'll show you how to assemble all this in a second. Actually, really, it's real simple. You get some M4 screws, 2. You don't need all 4. 2 of them by 10. Put those in. And then these are M3 by, I believe, 10 as well. Don't tighten them too much. You need this to still move. All right, and you're going to get your 6mm hub, and you're going to put the grub screw in, and you're going to make sure that it is horizontal or level, parallel, whatever you want to call it, in perpendicular to the motor. Yeah, how about that? Perpendicular to the motor, so 90 degrees. And this has to be straight so that we're gonna feed this through after in here once we're done. Now, before we do all of that, we need to get the limit switches set up. And there's a very specific way that you're gonna do it, and I'll show you how to do that here in a second, but essentially you're gonna get your limit switches, okay? I have the SKU for this, and go find it on Amazon or AliExpress, but it's these little small ones, and you're gonna cut off the middle post, and then we're gonna solder on the diodes. Which diodes? Well, these ones. The 1N4001, this is supposed to help with the stopping motion, and it'll limit how far the motor goes, because once it makes the connection on the limit switch, it cuts off the motor, and so the only direction is to go the opposite way. So we're going to get 2 of those, and it's very important you know which direction they are pointing. Lastly, you're going to grab yourself a electronic speed controller, ESE. All right. There should be 4 wires. 2 are going to go to the motor. 2 are going to go to a power source. So this goes back to the engine bay. So we're going to need some nice long wires to go there. But before we do all of this, we need to also keep in mind that these wires need to go to the diodes. And I'll show you how that all works out here in a second. Okay, so I've soldered these up. As you can see, based on the diagram that we talked about, the blue and purple are on the inside, the gray part of the diode is facing out, the red wire and the black wire are going to go to the motor over there. Okay, you solder that up, make all these connections, screw this in, and then so the process will be screw these guys in, keep these guys, run it a little bit longer than I have here. I probably have like 3 inches or so, or I don't know, probably try to do it about, I'd say 100 mils long, right? And then that way you can grab it and then solder the back once it's in the housing there. So let's do that next. Okay, now we've got these installed. There's M2 by 10 screws, 2 of them on each side, right? We're going to make sure that all of this stuff is out of the way, because once we put the motor in, the motor is going to come in here. We're going to have to solder these wires onto the motor once it's in, and then we'll feed them through the back. There you go. Now let's look at it installed. Now we're going to take a look at this. So you're going to be printing these. All right, these are the arms that go through. If you want, put a little bit of chrome on here, like with the marker, chrome marker, which I've got a chrome marker, and I'm just going to get those so they look like the cylinders. This base plate here, you're going to have an M2 by 10, M4 by 10, one on each side. And then these are going to be M3 by 10s. They're going to go in. From here, mounting to the motor, you're going to have M3 by 8s, one here, one at the front, and another one on the other side of the front. Okay. And then the motor leads are down here, one on the bottom, one on the top. And when we shoehorn this in, you'll be able to have, there's barely any space. And that's why I said make these wires longer so you can solder them first and then pull them in. And I'll show you how to do that in a second. Now, putting the motor in, right, we've assembled all this. Yours is going to look a little bit different. It's going to look like it's shifted back more. That's fine. When we're going to put this in, we're going to shoehorn it in so that the 2 little cylinders can stick out, and then you're going to push the front in and keep it tight against the front here, because we don't want the limit switches to get damaged or anything. And you're going to keep pushing down on the back and forward, and you're going to notice that we're ahead of where that hole's supposed to be, and that's fine as long as we're level. Okay, everything's come out properly. Now what you can do is you can move it back to where it needs to be. Lots of room here for the wires. Okay, we want to tuck those in, everything nicely. Okay, and then what you're going to do is these 2 wires, you're going to get an extension here, so you're going to get 2 more black and red wires. You're going to run them all the way to the back, and they're going to fish through this hole along with all the stuff from the neck, right? It's all going to go right through here and into the back. It comes out the bottom. Feed that over. You can leave this one in here so that it has its own room and it has nice fresh air to breathe. And then you're going to get these two wires. Of course, you're going to solder an extension onto it so it makes it to the back. And there you go. And that's that for the steering. And then I'll show you how